Okay, awesome. So I'm going to start and just introduce myself and then let you introduce yourself. So my name's Bekah, and I know we've talked a couple of times, but just, I guess, for the official record. And I'm with CFH Powerlifting. And I just want to start by saying thanks for sitting down and doing this with me today. So I really appreciate it. And I'm going to let you introduce yourself and tell us who you are.
For sure. Well, thank you for reaching out. My name is Deana Tollefson. You may see Deana Tollefson in some places such as Facebook. That's my maiden name. I'm sorry I'm late. Also, I know we planned on 1 o'clock and I'm running a little bit behind, so my apologies.
Oh, girl, don't worry. If I'm not late, then I'm not coming. So
Her own funeral.
he's not wrong. So in case people don't know, and if they're in the powerlifting world, then they do. You are the WPO Women's Winner this year. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So first off, I will tell you that I'm extremely nervous. So it's my first review.
You have nothing to be nervous for.
So I guess let's just kind of start with who you are, how you got into the sport, and I guess just a little bit of your background.
Sure. So I started powerlifting. Actually, I was introduced to it in high school, and it was a little bit different than what we're used to as powerlifting. I was in this gym class. I started this gym class in freshman year that was called Excel. So instead of doing like dodgeball and the normal gym class type stuff, this football coach created a program called Excel, and he taught us how to squat, bench, deadlift, but the deadlift was with a diamond or a trap bar, and then he added in a power clean. And then so like half of our class, he would have us go up to the football weight room and do whatever his prescription was for the day. And I don't know what the method behind the madness was, but he would tell us how many sets and reps to do for which exercise. And at the end of the semester, our final exam would be a mini powerlifting competition. He would split us into weight divisions, and if you were the winner, he'd give you a little trophy. So you would do squat, bench, deadlift, but it wasn't 3 attempts. I'm pretty sure it was just you went until you failed. And then the next day we would have to do a half-mile sprint. So it was a different type of spin on what we're used to as powerlifting, but that's really where I was introduced to competitive lifting, I guess, since we did compete against one another in that class. So that's where I was really introduced to lifting. And then I got out of the lifting scene for a little bit and got a little bit more into running, and then luckily came back to the lifting scene in 2016. I moved to Arizona, and I really missed being competitive. I had done sports pretty much since I was 6. I started gymnastics and then just did sports throughout my life. But in 2016, I had looked for what I could compete in as far as weightlifting went, and I found powerlifting. So I signed up for my first meet, which was in Prescott, Arizona, and it was with the 100% Raw Federation. And while I was training for that on my own, I do have experience being a personal trainer, not that I know how to set up a powerlifting prep whatsoever. I'm not going to speak to that. I just, from my basic education of being a personal trainer, I trained myself, quote unquote, for that first meet. But while doing so, I was lifting in a commercial gym, and one of the trainers saw me with a couple of plates on the bar on each side, which isn't typical for a commercial gym. At that time, you didn't really see that, especially at the gym that I was at. So one of the trainers had asked me what I was training for, and I was like, oh, my first powerlifting meet. And he was also into powerlifting, so he invited me to come and lift with him and his buddies just for fun. And one of his buddies happened to be Tim Isaac. I don't know if you're familiar with that name or not. He's an old school powerlifter who was into equipped lifting.
Right.
And he's the one who actually introduced me to lifting in gear. So when he introduced me to it, I wasn't ready to compete in that style because it was a huge learning curve, but we just did it for fun on the weekend. And he, would teach, coming from a raw background myself, he would teach us, that little group, the right technique for wearing a shirt and wearing a suit, and how to open up your stance for deadlift, because I used to be a conventional polar. So yeah, I feel like I'm rambling, but
No, you're fine. Because actually, one of the, I'd kind of talked to several people and said, hey, what do you guys want to know? Because I'll ramble on for hours with questions. And one of the questions that actually came, my husband actually said, most men grew up watching World's Strongest Man on TV and things like that. And, men have tons of powerlifting magazines growing up and everything. As women, we didn't really have that. So that was, one of the things he had asked, how were you introduced to the sport? How were you introduced to strength? And was there a particular moment that stands out in your mind that you decided, to be strong, or, was there an initial inspiration? So, I mean, I guess your PE teacher would kind of be the initial inspiration. But I guess, was there a particular moment that stands out to you when you decided, you want to be strong? Because for a lot of guys, my husband in particular, he was the little guy growing up. And, I'll be honest, he said he got tired of being bullied on the bus. And so he wanted to be strong. But was there a particular moment for you like that you decided you wanted to be strong, or was it just that introduction in school?
I feel, honestly, I always wanted to be smaller. all, all of my friends were always petite and tiny, and I always wanted to be the petite, tiny one, to be like them, if I'm being completely transparent.
And I think that's how it is for a lot of women. But once we start getting strong, then it's like, well, all right, here I am.
Right. Yeah. No, you start to appreciate it. And I don't think I started to appreciate that probably until my later 20s. But I feel like in high school, I would guess, from having more of an athletic background as growing up, you build that strength that you don't even realize is there. And then to be introduced to lifting from that gym teacher, I was like, well, I'm actually good at this. Like, I was winning. It was a much smaller, much smaller competition than what we do these days. But I think just realizing, oh, I'm actually kind of good at this. I have some natural strength going on. That was addicting, and I definitely missed that when I got more into the running scene. I mean, running is great and all. It's much different than lifting.
So
I got back into that.
And I'm sure all the bench only guys are gonna probably be like, well, we know what the answer should be, but is there a particular lift that's your favorite?
Oh, squat by far.
Again, all the bench only guys are gonna say that's the wrong answer, but we know that's the best lift, so it's okay.
Feels so interesting to have that weight on your back and just have it move. It's much different. Bench is actually my least favorite. And all the bench only people are going, what?
That's okay. I love to deadlift because I just think it's cool to be able to bend over and pick up something heavy, because I'm a little girl and I'm, so being able to pick up something heavy is like, oh, that's really cool.
Absolutely.
What do you do outside of lifting? What are your hobbies, and what do you enjoy doing? And, and what's your career? What do you do? I hate to say as your real job, but as your real job, because let's face it, we all know we're not getting rich off powerlifting.
No, wouldn't it be nice though?
Wouldn't it?
So my career, I'm a nurse. I've been a nurse for almost 10 years, and my actual role now is nursing house supervisor, which a lot of people, you say that to and they're like, what is that? It's a mix of the clinical and administrative side. So I'm a leader, but I also am still able to do hands-on nursing care, and it's usually in like a code or a critical rescue type situation. I'm not assigned to a unit. I am actually throughout the entire hospital, just going around and kind of whatever fires are going on, I need to put them out.
Well, thank you for
there isn't really like
that.
a role, but yeah, that's what. And I really enjoy working, so I typically pick up an extra shift. So I fill some of my free time with that, and then I love dogs. I have 2 dogs. I'm kind of a homebody. My boyfriend and I pretty much like to go to the gym or be at home. Not very exciting, but that's
It
what we enjoy doing.
sounds like most of us powerlifters, we like the gym and we like the house, and
Yeah,
that's
and
about
we
it.
like to eat.
Um, so I know we've talked a little bit about your background, and I'm gonna touch on a subject, and if you tell me to be quiet if you don't want to talk about it. I know that your coach passed away, and that's kind of how you ended up choosing Laura as your coach. And I know, some people have asked, the difference in the prep between the two coaches, kind of what that story is, and if you're comfortable talking about that, and how that, I guess, changed for you mentally, because obviously that's a big mental hurdle, and physically in prep and everything else.
Oh, sure. So Tim is the one who passed away, and I actually got to, his memorial was the same day as WPO. So that was a pretty neat day to be able to lift in memory of him. And I guess the difference in coaching, he didn't coach me for meets. He just enjoyed having our little group that enjoyed lifting together, and he would coach us that day on what we were doing. It wasn't really in preparation for meets, so that is a big difference there. I think we all just really enjoyed lifting and lifting together, and he had a long-standing background in that, so he was able to look at our body types and our way, our form, and just be able to coach us that day. Whereas Laura, I reached out to her for specific goals. I wanted to compete in multiply, and I part of my personality is if there's a top to something, I want to try to get there. So I knew I wanted to get to WPO someday, and I told her that when I reached out to her. And her training is, I mean, you can hire Laura to be your coach as meet specific or general health. Like, she has a lot of different things that she offers, but for me specifically, I did ask her, one, to coach me for nationals, and then it was a surprise to be invited to WPO, so she built the programming leading up to WPO as well. And she does conjugate style training, whereas Tim, when he would have us do our specific lifts, I wouldn't call it conjugate, but I wouldn't call it linear either. He did train us in waves, but it was more of, get used to this weight on your back, and we're going to do this to a high box this week, we're going to do this to a medium box the next week, and then a low box the week after. So you would get used to that weight, but not necessarily worry about depth right away. And it was the same thing in a shirt. We would work the weight to a 3 board, and then a 2 board, and then a 1 board, and then try to touch. So different theories, but I enjoyed them both, and I feel like I saw my numbers move up with both, and luckily, knock on wood, haven't gotten injured with either one.
That's always a plus. Obviously, winning the WPOs is probably the highlight of your career so far.
Absolutely.
Outside of that, what are some of your favorite moments in powerlifting and in your life, just in general?
I I have to go back to my first powerlifting meet ever, because I went in there with zero expectations, had never been to a meet as a spectator, didn't know how the day was going to go, and it was such an eye-opening day to be part of a sport where you are technically competing against one another, but really, I mean, you're competing against yourself. However, those in the same weight division would be, rooting for you on the platform, even though you're against them. So I feel like that meet I will never ever forget, because it was such a nice welcoming into the powerlifting world, and I'm thankful for it, because it made me go, okay, this is a neat community. I want to be a part of this. I want to continue with this. I want to help build this.
Right.
So as far as powerlifting, that is definitely a standout day. Outside of powerlifting, I'd say getting my master's degree, because going back to nursing school, I don't know if you know anyone in healthcare or if you have any family members in healthcare, but nursing school is difficult.
I do, as a matter of fact, my cousin is, and so yes, that that's quite a quite a lofty goal. So congratulations on that.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Um, and I guess, where do you see yourself in 10 years?
Still competing.
That's what I wanted to hear.
Yeah, hopefully still moving numbers up. I know that it's unrealistic to hope to make PRs at every meet, but I'd like to still be moving in that direction.
Right.
At that point, I'll be 44, and Rebecca Roberts is still kicking butt at 44.
Absolutely.
There's lots of inspiring females out there that lead me to believe in 10 years I could still be a valuable competitor.
Well, and we really look forward to watching that too. How do you feel about the progression of the sport, or about the sport in general and its progression of female powerlifters? Because, we're kind of, I don't want to say under attack, but we kind of are under attack right now. But we're stronger than ever. And I guess, how do you feel about that right now?
I think it's refreshing to see more and more females getting into powerlifting. Going back to like the videos, because that's how I got into, I want to say my inspiration was watching videos of female powerlifters, because I hadn't been to powerlifting meets before my first one, and there weren't many females to even search or watch.
Right.
And I know, like, if you look at rosters way back then, there's a handful of
Handful
women.
of them, right?
Yeah, and now there are enough women competing to make a whole meet out of just a female powerlifting meet. I know there's some federations that do that, and even if it's not a women's only, it seems like some meets there are even more women signed up than men, or very, very close, rather than only 3, 4, or 5 women.
Absolutely.
That's really cool to see. I think women are getting more comfortable being strong and doing sports that aren't necessarily looked at as a feminine sport. So I think we as in female powerlifters, we're setting an example that this is a neat sport to do. Get your butt in here and try it out.
Right.
I know we are getting more. I don't want to say spotlight. I think that's the right way to say it. We're getting more spotlight, that we're lifting big numbers, and it's not something people outside of the sport are used to seeing. So it's neat to bring more eyes to female powerlifting. And I do think social media is helping with that, and the podcasts that have come out, because those weren't around. It was the Powerlifting USA magazine and
Yeah.
YouTube videos. And that's usually, so I think the transition into Instagram and Facebook and even more, I'm not very active on social media, but I do feel like those are bringing a lot of attention to female powerlifting.
I agree. So I guess, what can you offer other women in the sport, as far as, any challenges that you've overcome, or challenges, adversities, anything like that? What can you offer, women in this sport that are wanting to do what we're all trying to do, and put more of a spotlight on it, get your butt in here, like you said?
Yeah, I feel like it's easier said than done to say just sign up for meets that intimidate you. One, getting into a local meet would be step one, and then from local meets, just signing up for or trying to qualify for those bigger meets just to get out there. I think a lot of us have that little voice in our head that's saying, no, my numbers aren't big enough yet. But if you have a qualifying total, sign up and get a feel for it and enjoy it. And I can speak to, I've had, I don't want to say difficult days, just moments where those that are not in a powerlifting community see a muscular female and you maybe don't have the nicest things to say. I would like to ask women to remember that usually when people are spreading that negativity, it's an outward reflection of them, not of you, and to take that with a grain of salt, because I know that can affect how you feel about yourself and your sport, and it could mess up your workout that day, and that's not fair to you to give someone else whose opinion is really none of your business.
Right.
Don't let that affect you.
Right.
And I unfortunately, I feel like most females are going to be able to connect with that, which is sad, but it's true.
Right. Right. What was one of your, what's one of the most, I got to think how I want to word this without, give me just a second. Sorry.
Of course, no, take your time. There's nothing that will offend me if you're trying to think of a way
No. I guess, what was, other than winning the WPOs, what was your biggest takeaway from that day? I didn't want to say what was your biggest takeaway from the WPOs, because obviously winning would be, the biggest quote unquote takeaway. But other than winning, what was your biggest takeaway from that day? What was your the biggest moment for you from that day?
Well, I think there's a couple, and I'm trying to think of how to explain this. WPO, I think most of us look at it as, the way I look at it is that's the biggest platform for equipped lifting, and
The pinnacle.
yeah, to be there, I was just excited to be invited there, and I found myself just in awe for most of the day for being there and competing against the best of the best and people who I've watched from afar, and I'm actually getting to be there in the warm-up room with them and be there on the platform with them and cheering each other on. And what was really neat is everyone truly wanted to see the other lifter get their lift, which is just a reminder of how awesome this sport is. So I'd say that was one big takeaway, just leaving there being happy to be a part of such a neat community of people. And that community is such a mix. Like if you look at all of our backgrounds, it's such a random mix of people, but we all
Right.
are just wanting to see each other succeed. So that was one big takeaway, is just how amazing this sport and community is. And then more personal, all of those numbers that I hit were PRs. So even if it wasn't a win that day, that was going to be a huge takeaway. And being able to lift in memory of Tim and with my lifting idol as my coach, it was just all around an amazing day. There's no other way to put it, whether there was a first place or a second place or not even placing in the top. I was just happy to be there. It was the whole day was a takeaway without the win.
And I guess this is just for me personally as a meet director. I would have been nervous if it were me. So I'm going to ask, as from the lifter standpoint, was there a moment when you kind of knew you had it in the bag, for lack of better words? Because obviously as a meet director sitting at the table, I would kind of have an idea of who the winner is going to be. And, as a coach, your coach kind of knows what numbers you need to have to be in that top running. And, obviously it's going to depend on what other lifters pull. But as a lifter, do you kind of know, all right, if I get this, I kind of have it, or I'm pretty close to having it. And if you know that, how do you mentally, how do you mentally not freak out?
I would have mentally freaked out if I knew no one around me was letting me know that I was in first.
Fair enough.
which I'm thankful for. Like I knew I was at like towards the top, but I knew Rebecca, Tara, and I were all close to one another when we were in bench, and then going into deadlift on our warm-ups. I remember I was asking Laura, what what is Rebecca's top pull? And because I'm just thinking in my head, like, okay, that we're all really close, that it's going to come down to deadlifts. And Rudy Rosales from Overkill, he walked up to me and he's like, you better eat, you better get fuel in you, because you need to go out there and pull like no one's business. Like, okay, we're all really, really close to each other now. This is going to come down to our deadlifts. So I didn't know who was in what place. I knew we were all, I thought we were closer than what we were going into
Right.
deadlifts. And even up to my last pull, I didn't know that I had already gotten ahead of them, which again I'm thankful for, because you just, like you said, you would freak out, and
Right.
I'd rather go in to each lift going, I need to make this work, especially deadlift. It's like, just don't stop pulling is what's
Right.
going
Right.
through my head. And I didn't know what weight Laura had called for that last deadlift of the day, and I am the type of lifter, I'd rather not know what's on the bar. I just want to go in and think about my form and not the number that's on there. So luckily those around me that were calling the numbers, and my handler, my boyfriend, and my support crew who were there, nobody was letting me know that I was at the top, which is great.
So then the moment that you find out you are was, I'm sure, even more surreal.
Oh yeah. Yeah. After that last deadlift, I went up and gave a couple people a hug, and it's like, that was so exciting. That was a PR. And they're like, dude, you just won WPO. Like, oh, I kind of had a feeling I was up, but this is making it real right now with you saying that.
Well, yeah, my husband just said I'd call that a PR. So yeah, for sure, that was definitely a PR.
Yeah.
um, so just I guess just I'm gonna ask a couple just little questions. A couple people wanted to know, are there any fun facts that we should know about you?
Fun fact, I like to eat Skittles in between each of my lifts. Whether it's a meet day or a training day, I don't like to be in the gym or at a meet without Skittles. Um, that's all that's coming to mind right
Hey,
now.
that's good to know. Maybe you guys women need to know that Skittles might help.
Power pills, yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Skittles help. Um, any advice for younger lifters, especially so like we're in Texas and we have high school powerlifting here. It's huge here in Texas. We have a lot of girls who lift at our meets in particular. And any advice for the younger lifters, but specifically for younger female lifters?
I I don't know that this would be female specific, but for the younger and newer lifters, my advice would be to focus on just getting better than what you were before. Don't focus on how everyone else around you is lifting, or their numbers, or their weight. I think you enjoy the sport a lot more, and you actually progress in a smoother fashion if you focus on, squatting better than you did at the last meet, rather than beating that girl next to you, or if you're in the squatting in the 200s and there's someone in the 300s, don't worry about that. Just worry about adding a couple more pounds to your lift compared to what you did last time. For a while there, I would go into, I don't want to say for a while, for a couple of meets that I did in the beginning, I would get hung up on how much better some of the other female lifters were. That was without taking into account their training years, their background, what they were there for, and it took the fun out of it at those meets, I remember. And the fun started really kicking up when I just wanted to do better than Deana did before. So if you can change your mindset, I think the earlier you can do that, the better.
Fair enough. Well, I think that's about all I have. Again, I just want to say thank you so much for sitting down and doing this with me today. It means a lot to me personally that you let me be the one to do this.
Oh,
I really
pleasure.
appreciate that.
Of course.
I really look forward to watching you over the next 10 years because that's what you're going to do for the next 10 years. And just congratulations again on an amazing day at the WPOs. It was a lot of fun to watch as a woman who loves powerlifting herself. It was a lot of fun to watch. And while you might not have known how well you were doing, it was a lot of fun to watch how well you were doing and where you were in placing and everything else. So congratulations again. And thank you for everything that you're doing for the sport and for women in this sport. And we really look forward to it was quite an amazing day. So I really enjoyed it. And I just really appreciate you sitting down and talking to me today.
Of course. And like I said, it's my pleasure. And thank you so much for all of the kind things. You just feel like that was so many kind things from you. Thank you. It means a lot. And thank you for being part of powerlifting and paving the way for female powerlifters. We have to elevate each other up.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Leah and I have talked a couple times, and, there's one thing that we as female powerlifters do. And, we don't have to have the same beliefs or the same opinions or anything else, but buddy, let us get into a meet or get on a platform or anything else. And we certainly come together as a team, no matter whether we're competing against each other, with each other. Meet director, power lifter, doesn't seem to matter. And I think that's one thing that I hope to show some of these younger lifters in doing like this interview and anything. Just, I want women to see that as women, we really are a team in this sport. So I really appreciate you being part of that team. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm happy to be part of it.
Well, thanks. And I hope that you have a great rest of your weekend. Enjoy some time off and rest.
Thank you. You enjoy the rest of your weekend as well. And sorry again for being late to this.
Oh, stop, please. I was just glad you were the late one and not me. I'll be honest. Have a great rest of your weekend, Deana, and I'll talk to you very soon.
Alrighty. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.